Hello and welcome. You're watching India Global. I'm Gaurie, Dwivedi. The next 30 minutes, we get you all the big stories that matter to you with a deep dive on those that have a long-term impact. But first up, as always, with headlines. The Dalai Lama reveals his succession plan as China watches. His Holiness confirms he will have a successor after his death. The Quad grouping confirms Pahalgam attack and condemns the terror attack without naming Pakistan, a huge push and boost for India's diplomacy. Prime Minister Modi embarks on the first leg of his five-nation tour. First stop will be Ghana. This will be Prime Minister Modi's longest foreign trip in 10 years. One of America's largest Hindu temples, ISKCON Temple in Utah, has been attacked in a suspected hate crime. Multiple shots fired at the temple in Utah while guests and devotees were inside. Iran has suspended cooperation with UN nuclear watchdog. Iranian president gives his final approval to end the cooperation with IAEA. This comes just days after suspense remains, confusion continues as far as whether or not the American strikes were able to obliterate the 3 Iranian nuclear sites. Viewers, our top story on India Global. It's official. His Holiness Dalai Lama is not going anywhere. It's a bombshell of a statement that comes just days ahead of his 90th birthday. The spiritual leader of Tibet and Tibetans world over has declared that the 600-year-old institution will continue after his death. Moreover, he has made one thing absolutely clear, which is that Beijing has no say whatsoever in this entire institution and the process. In fact, after years of silence, His Holiness has ended the guessing game, citing overwhelming appeals from Tibetans, both in exile and inside the Tibet that has been under Chinese control. He affirmed the Garden Phodrang Trust, not the Chinese government, that will have exclusive authority to recognize his reincarnation. Now, that's a clear direct hit as far as China is concerned. Beijing insists that it alone can name the next Dalai Lama. That isn't the case. Now, Dalai Lama is the spiritual fountainhead of the Tibetan Buddhist sect the world over, which is why continuation of this tradition is so important for the people. Even as China has long said that it wants to appoint the next Dalai Lama. Now, this move by His Holiness is going to have a very strong impact in terms of ensuring that the tradition stays solely under the control of the Tibetans. But Dalai Lama isn't backing down. He says his successor will be born outside of China, slamming the door on Beijing's plans. Support for the decision spans continents, from the Himalayas to Mongolia, Russia, and even within Tibet itself. That's despite China's brutal crackdown on the Tibetan culture and religion that has continued since 1959. So while Beijing claims control, Dalai Lama just drew a spiritual red line, and it's the line the dragon cannot cross. Let's quickly now first play out the soundbite of His Holiness. We, of course, then go ahead with the big questions, as always.
공장 상도 선거 추규 라진카다 비미천 제유탄대 망조로 고들지 겨우군지 균투 귀미 결시 타수 최사인 시사와다 벌거 니네 탄대 망조로 믹세 고들 저규 마쇼로 대베 롱을 주시인 추규카가 우치 라진나보다 Pemi tizu ki tuzu dang mikse sokje zengyung dang shungzin membe sokbaka Himalaya rikyu chenpo hor dang rusu kongye nangbe yugun
The big questions on India Global today. First up, how soon will the trust clarify as far as Dalai Lama's succession plan is concerned? When can we have the next search being started and the date by when the next Dalai Lama could be announced? Second question, will China now announce its own successor? They've done so in the past as well. The earlier Dalai Lama, remember, he was nowhere to be found for the last 3 decades, and then there was these Panchen Lamas appointed by China as well. Will that entire circus go again once again? Well, we'll ask that as well. Second, the other question is, will this strengthen the Tibetan diaspora? To a large extent, the cause of Tibet is being supported by the Tibetan diaspora world over, including those that exist in India to a large extent. Will they get a fresh lease of life with the announcement of the next Dalai Lama? And lastly, what about the India-China relationship in the midst of this? Let's get in Brahma Chellaney for more on this. Mr. Chellaney, thanks so much for joining us on the broadcast. We put out the 4 big questions that I feel are very integral to understand this. Your take on, first and foremost, how do you see the announcement and the message that His Holiness is sending to China?
The Dalai Lama actually had published a book earlier this year in March. The title was Voice for the Voiceless. In that book, he said very categorically that the next Dalai Lama will be born in the free world. In other words, the Dalai Lama will not be born in Tibet. He is explicitly excluded Tibet. And I think that was a very clear and categorical statement from the Dalai Lama. But more importantly, he had said previously that when he turns 90, around that time, he would clarify the rules of succession. Those rules are critical because there has been ambiguity from past statements of the Dalai Lama as to what the next Dalai Lama, where he should be found. But that issue has been clarified now. But he has also added confusion in terms of, for example, once he said that the next Dalai Lama could even be a woman. He once said that maybe the Dalai Lama institution could die with him.
Yes.
But again, that part at least he's now clarified that this institution will continue. This is a 600-year-old institution. So some aspects have been clarified, but the actual rules as to how the successor is to be found,
yes,
those rules have to be clearly and unambiguously stated by the Dalai Lama.
Indeed, that has to be delineated very clearly, and possibly in due course of time we'll get details on that. Let me then ask you about the China factor. To a large extent, the Tibetan cause inside China has pretty much been stamped out by the brutal crushing of the Tibetan uprising in the last 70-odd years. But it's the legitimacy of Chinese sovereign control that the CCP really seeks. How do you see China's next actions with this announcement coming in?
China sees a compliant, state-appointed Dalai Lama as the final prize in subjugating Tibet. So it has a plan already for the day after Dalai Lama's passing away, and that plan is to install a pretender as the new Dalai Lama. For the Tibetans, this succession issue is an existential issue. After all, Tibet is under increasing repressive rule. More than 1 million Tibetan children have been forcibly taken away from their parents and placed into Mandarin language boarding schools. The whole idea is to wipe out Tibet's culture and identity.
Yes.
And in that larger plan, controlling the Dalai Lama institution, as I said, is the final prize that China is seeking to not only complete its subjugation of Tibet, but also to complete its control of Tibetan Buddhism.
Right. Final question then, Mr. Chellaney, which is around the fact that how do you see the India-China relationship in the backdrop of this? Because India does host the Tibetan government in exile. It hosts a very large number of Tibetans. How do you see the India-China relationship in the context of this?
First, China's determination to appoint the next Dalai Lama would be the equivalent of the Italian government appointing a new pope. It is as crazy as that idea. And yet, China is clearly determined to appoint the next Dalai Lama the way it has sought to capture the Panchen Lama institution by first abducting the real Panchen Lama and then installing a fake Panchen Lama. The problem is this, that within Tibet, the fake Panchen Lama, nobody recognizes him, he gets no respect, he's just a state appointee. To frustrate
Lani,
that
as we
plan of
speak, there's a statement that's coming from China where they've actually rejected what His Holiness has just put out, and the Chinese government has said that this next successor should be approved by the central government. Let's get those breaking flashes on our screens. Disha, let's get those flashes right there. Which is that Dalai Lama's successor must be approved by the central government is what the official word has come in from China. So you see that this is a face-off that is going to escalate because China is not going to cede control so easily. In next coming days and months and years, you will see this escalating. Brahma Chellaney.
Well, to say that China will not cede control would suggest that China already controls the Dalai Lama institution. It has never historically controlled that institution. And what it's seeking to do now in the future would be a complete usurpation of Tibetan Buddhist traditions. A government has no role in religious matters. The US government and the US Congress both have affirmed this. In fact, there is a law, an American law, which threatens to impose sanctions on Tibetan officials that interfere with the succession issue. As far as India-China relations are concerned, we should not forget that India houses the vast majority of Tibetan exiles, and more importantly, India plays a central role in keeping the Tibetan language and culture alive, because while China is seeking to stamp out Tibetan culture and identity, it is the Indian government, the Indian taxpayers who fund Tibetan language schools and monastic institutions. They see, and Indian support is what keeps alive the unique Tibetan culture and identity. And India plays a very important role, and I hope that on the succession issue, India has a plan, to counter China's plan, because we should not be reactive. We should be proactive, and we should know that the succession issue is critical for India's own security.
It is a very critical issue and affects India as well. And we're going to keep coming back to this story. Brahma Chellaney, really appreciate you joining us live on this story that we're breaking right here on India Global. All right, viewers, as we keep a very close watch on what's unfolding as far as the issue related to Dalai Lama is concerned, there's another important update. That's the latest as far as the stunning diplomatic victory that India has been able to achieve as far as the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting is concerned. Even as Pakistan takes the chair of the UN Security Council this July, the world's most powerful democracies have just sent the message to Islamabad loud and clear, which is enough At the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting in Washington, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar did not mince his words. Without naming Pakistan, he tore into the world's selective indifference to terrorism. Days after the Pahalgam attack killed 26 Indians, many of them, in fact 25 of them, were tourists. The message was clearer than daylight. India will defend its people, full stop. I want to play out that soundbite of Dr. Jaishankar.
Quad is about deepening our convergence and expanding our common ground. I value our consultations on different dimensions of the Indo-Pacific in that regard. A lot is happening in the world, and I'm sure that our exchange of views will be very valuable for all of us. A word about terrorism in the light of our recent experience. The world must display zero tolerance. Victims and perpetrators must never be equated. And India has every right to defend its people against terrorism, and we will exercise that right. We expect our Quad partners to understand and appreciate that.
All right, viewers. Now, well, let me just end by saying that Pakistan may be sitting in the UNSC chair, but it was left red-faced as Jaishankar slammed the global double standard as far as Pakistan being the fountainhead of global terrorism that continues to come from its soil. I'm going to now shift focus and talk about, well, Prime Minister Modi's very important five-nation tour, which is the longest he's undertaken in the last 10 years. He's embarked for Accra, and which is Ghana, where marking the first leg of his five-nation tour aimed at reinforcing India's global South partnership. So with a focus on strengthening bonds across the global South and both sides of the Atlantic, the tour includes visits to Ghana, then Trinidad and Tobago, followed by Argentina and Brazil, where he'll be there for the BRICS summit. And in the end, wrapping it up would be his visit to Namibia, nations that Prime Minister Modi described as vital partners in India's evolving foreign policy architecture, spanning historical ties, cultural linkages, economic engagement and multilateral cooperation. And that really is summing up as far as the importance of this trip and several aspects of it, which will be both diplomatic, economic and others. All right, an update coming in as far as the India-US trade deal is concerned. It's been in the pipeline for some time, but there's been a lot of progress. And in fact, Donald Trump has said that a major trade deal with India could be close, potentially slashing tariffs and opening doors for American companies. Speaking on board the Air Force One, Donald Trump said India may finally lower barriers for American businesses, a move that could help avoid the sharp 27% tariff hike that may come in from 9th of July. India's Foreign Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, now in the US, confirmed that talks are intense, but added both sides need to give and take. For now, all eyes are on India and the 9th of July deadline. Will the deal get done by then is the key question. Let's first listen in to what Donald Trump had to say as far as this deal, which many believe is pretty much now on the anvil.
Week before we're going to have a deal with India, possibly. And that's going to be a different kind of a deal. It's going to be a deal where we're able to go in and compete. Right now, India doesn't accept anybody in. I think India is going to do that. And if they do that, we're going to have a deal for much less tariffs.
All right, viewers, on that note, a quick break on India Global. We return with the other story that has shocked many around the world, which is the attack on ISKCON temple in Utah. We come back with details of that. Viewers, the ISKCON temple in Spanish Fork in Utah, renowned globally for hosting the annual Holy Festival, has come under attack in a suspected hate crime, with over 24 bullets fired at the premises over several days, causing significant structural damage. As per ISKCON, maybe 20, maybe 30 bullets were fired at the building premises and the surrounding property during nighttime hours when devotees and guests were there. Remember, that's the time when evening aartis take place. There must be a large number of devotees inside. This is when this incident took place, resulting in thousands of dollars of damage to the temple's intricately handcrafted arches, but at the same time putting at risk so many people who were inside the temple there. Now, the Consulate General of India in San Francisco has expressed solidarity with the community and urged significant and swift action to be taken. But the larger point here is that why is it that you have a Hindu place of worship being under attack there and no voices being raised as far as widespread condemnation is concerned? That's the big question that we are putting out here as far as India Global is concerned, to tell exactly how significant has the hate crime increased with regards to Hindus in America. All right, US President Donald Trump has announced that Israel has agreed to an updated proposal for a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza that would secure the release of several hostages. There are about 20 who are still alive, expected to be alive. He urged Hamas to accept the deal, warning on Truth Social, that is his social media platform, that it will not get better. It will only get worse, which means that this is the best deal on the table for Hamas to take. The final proposal will be delivered by Qatar and Egypt, the two parties and the two countries who've been the mediators between this. They've been trying to broker peace. It remains to be seen whether this deal would actually be picked up by Hamas or not. If it does, then Donald Trump can most certainly take credit for ending at least one of the wars that he thought he would end in 24 hours. More news coming in from the US. Roughly 2 weeks since the American strikes on Iranian key nuclear facilities, Tehran has officially suspended its cooperation with the IAEA. That's the UN nuclear watchdog, that is International Atomic Energy Agency. That's what the official announcement has come in from Iranian President Mohammad Pezeshkian. He's officially notified the cabinet of the enactment of the law suspending cooperation. Now, this comes after Iranian parliament approved the bill on Wednesday. Now, this means that the law will stipulates that any future inspection by International Atomic Energy Agency would need approval by the National Security Council. It essentially pretty much puts any possible conversation regarding Iranian nuclear program in the cold storage. Now, where will that leave talks between Iran and the US, brokered by several people in the Middle East, remains to be seen. It could potentially force Donald Trump to double down on his sanctions as far as Iran is concerned. He's been talking about putting the lid off, but this may be another reason for him to go more hawkish as far as Iran is concerned. US has halted some weapons shipments to Kiev as Russia's war against Ukraine has intensified. The decision was taken to put America's interests first, following a Department of Defense review of American military support and assistance to other countries. US has sent tens of billions of dollars in military aid to Ukraine since Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February 2022, leading some in the Trump administration to voice concerns that US stockpiles are now too low. The Ukrainian government has not commented on the announcement, and US officials did not say which are those shipments that are being halted. Now, this means that America is preparing for its own military arsenal rather than providing anything more to Ukraine, probably setting the stage for some sort of a peace talk to be accepted by both sides. All right, turning attention now to what many feel as far as the latest drama between Trump and Musk is concerned. There's been a war of words on both sides, and you have President Trump saying that Doge is a monster that can only go back and bite Elon. Let me, in fact, viewers, tell you exactly the kind of war of words that's intensified between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. These are two of the most powerful men on earth, and they've been at each other for the last couple of weeks. And I've got some of those comments that have come in from both Donald Trump and Elon Musk to tell you just how ugly the fight is actually getting. Now, Doge is a monster that may go back and eat Elon. That is what Donald Trump has said, that, and hinting that when it comes to cost cutting, it may actually be Elon Musk's companies that may be at the receiving end of it, and said that Doge should review Musk's subsidies. Which are these subsidies? We're talking about billions of dollars of subsidies that go to his electric vehicle program that has largely been funded by the subsidies. And then says we'll have to take a look on deporting Musk as well. That's what Donald Trump's comments have been. Now, why is he talking about deporting Elon Musk? Well, there's been in the backdrop, in the past, there have been some comments about Elon Musk when he moved from South Africa to US. The visa status that he had moved on did not allow him to work. And that could be the backdrop of him making probably the biggest threat possible as far as Donald Trump and Elon Musk are concerned. Now, what has been the response that has come in? Well, he hasn't held back, Elon Musk. Look at what he's saying. Tax cut bill is a disgusting abomination. That's the first thing that he has said. Then he went on to say, we live in a one-party country, the Porky Pig Party. Look at as I said, he's not holding back either, because he sees billions of dollars of his EV subsidies pretty much now being written off. And lastly, he said, so tempted to escalate, but will refrain for now. So he's willing to take this a notch higher. He's just stopping it right now. I don't know who's been able to advise him for some caution, but maybe it could be only for some time, because both men are known to, in fact, give it as good as it gets. One thing what I can say is that Elon Musk has pretty much written off the $300 million that he had given to President Trump, because that's what the commentary looks like. Is there an olive branch in the offing? Well, no one knows. But viewers, that's what it's looking like right now. That was the kind of face-off that I wanted to share with you, viewers, in terms of what all has been said between the two sides. Well, I want to now, as we wrap things up, tell you one thing, which is about Anil Menon. That's an important story, as India has been celebrating its space mission. And as we celebrate Shubhanshu Shukla, let's also now celebrate Anil Menon. NASA astronaut has been assigned his first mission to the International Space Station, serving as a flight engineer and expedition of a crew member. Menon will launch aboard the Roscosmos Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft in June 2026. During his expedition, Menon will conduct scientific investigations and tech demonstrations to help prepare humans for future space missions and benefit humanity. As I said, we celebrate Shubhanshu Shukla. It's time to also celebrate Anil Menon. All right. With that, viewers, we wrap things up on this edition of India Global. Thanks so very much for watching.